the idea of e-portfolios. Um, so perhaps we can do this with a reaction. So maybe you can give us a little thumbs up reaction if you have used e-portfolios or portfolios in any of your classes or courses. And maybe we could take a look and see if anyone has used them. Great, I'm seeing some thumbs, but not too many actually. So this will be new information for many of us. So e-portfolios or portfolios, first, what is it that they do? What actually are they? And we think about them in the Creates Toolkit for Co-Creative Learning as a possibility for reflection, for connection, or for presentation. So it's doing three different things. The first is that they can be an area for personal or professional reflection, where you can gather your materials or curate materials or work that you've done, images, articles, that might be important to you, all into one place, and use it as a way to reflect on your own values, your own goals for yourself, maybe your personal or professional goals, and use this as a space to think about your learning in the broader context of how it relates to your life. It can also be a place, especially for students who are in interdisciplinary degrees or in individualized degrees, where they're pulling from multiple disciplines and fields and taking courses across departments or maybe in different universities. It can be a framework for facilitating interdisciplinary inquiry and connections. So this can be a space where the things that a student is learning in her statistical methods course can be connected to the things she's learning in her gender studies courses. That she can use this space to make connections between the different disciplines and the different things she's learned. It can also be a showcase of student learning. So that means that it can be used as a form of assessment because it can be used as a way to show learning, as a way to assess learning and assess change over time, or assess knowledge of content, as well as proof of competencies or proof of skills that have been gained during your study. So this is what e-portfolios are. And when we say e-portfolios, we mean that this is happening in an online platform of some kind. But this also applies to analog or paper portfolios, or the sort of conventional way of making a portfolio, which is in a physical copy. So in short, e-portfolios or portfolios can be defined as dynamic and open platforms which enable a wide variety of student assessment, learning, and reflective activities. And if you're interested in learning more about e-portfolios and portfolios, we recommend Lorenzo and Idelson if you want for further reading. Like we said, the kind of portfolio you employ and even the venue in which you're employing it really depends on what you want to support in terms of your learning goals. So if you want to use this as a showcase of student learning, then you will want to think of ways to assess student knowledge of content, as well as the competencies that you are hoping that they're gaining in your classroom. So in that case, you're probably going to want to provide lots of information about what you expect from students in their portfolio. On the other hand, if you're using it for personal development and reflection, you might want it to be more of an open space. If this is something that students are doing on their own to connect the parts of their degree together, or to connect the conclusions and information and knowledge that they're gleaning from different courses, it might be much more open. It might be personal. It might not be something that students are sharing with others, not even their advisors or not even their teachers, if it's meant for being for personal reflection and development. So it really depends on what your learning outcome is, or what you're striving for with the e-portfolios, the style that you're using. So, how might you employ e-portfolios in your program or in your courses? And I'll present two different examples today, one for assessment and one focused around the reflection. So these two main outcomes or goals or objectives that you might be working towards with your students. So the first example comes from King's College London, and this is in a course in the humanities. It's a literature course, and the way that e-portfolios are implemented is as a form of final assessment in a learning community, so in group work. So students are working in teams and collaboratively contributing to an e-portfolio, which will be the main form of assessment for the course. The way that the e-portfolios are supported, so this is something that we don't expect students to be able to do when they come into the class, is through workshops to help introduce and train students in using the tool. In this case, the platform that is used is called Mahara. Mahara is the software that is used at King's College London, and we also use it here at Leuphana. And the reason that it's selected is because it's easily integrated with other online tools like the learning management systems of Blackboard, which is, I believe, what they use at King's, and Moodle, which is the other learning management system that we use here at Leuphana. So students are trained in how to use this tool, and they're also trained in the skill of curation. So they're taught about, or they're practice using selection of objects or artifacts to support and to flesh out a coherent theme. So they're trained and they practice in this idea of collecting artifacts and contextualizing them, explaining them, perhaps also combining them with originally produced analytical written content, or media such as recorded presentations, video or audio components, perhaps using other online tools like the online presentation tool Prezi. So in this way, students are able to show their learning using different kinds of media, using objects that are not as easily presented in a paper format or in a traditional format, and draw connections between different kinds of ideas, and draw novel connections that they're coming up with themselves, not those that are being dictated down from the teacher. So it's a more student-centered approach to assessment, possibly. And so here we have an example of one group's work. This is, again, from a humanities class. And what we can see here is the title of this portfolio is called Arthurian Magic in Modern Media. We have a topic sentence at the top of the portfolio, which is the coherent theme that students designed. And we see the use of objects and explanation, highlighted quotes, as well as a digital exhibition. It looks like they used Prezi here and recorded a presentation you can watch, as well as a bibliography with links that can take you directly to the sources that the students used. So again, this is an example of how the e-portfolio can be used to assess student learning, to allow for creativity in the way that students show their learning, and also as a way to support the skill. It's not just dropping a tool into the laps of students and saying, now you have to do this instead of a written exam, but also scaffolding the learning how to use the tool and the skill that you need, the curation competency that is required to make this form of assessment an accurate assessment of learning. So this is the example of ePortfolio as used as assessment. Now we'll move on to another example. In this case, it's using ePortfolios or portfolios for reflection. And this is an example from Leuphana University. And these were first year master's studies students, actually. So they're not undergraduate students, they're master's students. And this was a pilot program that was started in 2018 to support students drawing connections and encouraging personal reflection during the first semester of their master's studies. And it was built around 4 outputs, which are basically like 4 sets of prompts to encourage students to think about what it is that they want to get out of their master's course of study, what is it that drew them to this topic in the first place, so connecting what they care about, their values and what's important to them, as well as their future goals to what they're studying right now. And considering looking towards the future, how will they continue to work towards those goals during the master's program and beyond? So we can see that the 4 outputs were built around these 4 ideas of building on experience, taking part in inquiry, creating context, and making evident. And we have a selection of some of the questions that were included in each of those outputs. It was more extensive than this. There were other ideas, opportunities to sketch, opportunities to interview a person who's important to you. So creative ways of getting at this form of reflection of what's important to students. And this is what the timeline looked like for students. Again, this was in the 2018 to 2019 winter semester. So there was a kickoff workshop. I apologize, I keep skipping forward. Here we go. A kickoff workshop, outputs that were worked on at particular workshops throughout the semester. And the students had the option here of either engaging in a paper folder, like a paper portfolio that had worksheets, again, where they could sketch or they could add other media, or they could write by hand, or they could engage online through Moodle in this portfolio system. Since this time, Leuphana has actually incorporated Mahara into Moodle, and so it looks a little different now. But the point is that the students had the option to engage either with the paper folder or with the online folder. And this wasn't assessed. This was merely a way to support students in this first semester, and to make this form of self-reflection something that was scaffolded, that students felt like they had the space to do so, and they could keep everything in one place, all of their reflections. So these are the strengths of e-portfolios, the 2 very different ways that they can be used, e-portfolios or paper portfolios. So we'll move on to a discussion now. So this is an opportunity, again, to exchange with your partners. If you have had the opportunity of using a portfolio or e-portfolio, I know some of us have, it'd be really valuable for those of us who haven't used it in our classes to hear your experiences and what you think it's good for. But even if you haven't, can you imagine what the benefits for using e-portfolios or portfolios would be in using it for assessment in your courses, or using it for reflection or connection? And of course, yeah, also the benefits going along with it, the challenges or the limitations that you either foresee or that you've experienced if you've used e-portfolios in the past.